Welcome, everybody. Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
Yeah, Tom, we're really glad you're here. If you guys don't know Tom Walker, he is amazing. He was one of my instructors when I went to Indiana University during graduate school. There were lots of long chats about typography, the spacing in letterpress printing, and I think like sad country music songs, Tom.
Yes.
And he has been a longtime friend of Hamilton. He comes up here to help catalog our, and I don't hope I'm not giving away too much of the presentation, but help catalog our collections. He helps do printing. He's been printing amazing Indy 500 prints for years. And if you saw any of the Aways Goose this last in November, he did the amazing design work. And I will say, from awesome bandanas to the interstitials to everything, that was designed by Tom Walker. So an awesome designer, both on screen and off. So
everybody enjoyed it.
Yeah, you did. You knocked it out of the park with those.
Thanks.
Yes. I will say he's been a professional designer for over 25 years, so that totally makes sense. You've taught at the university level for a decade, and printing has always been a part of his professional practice and teaching. Now he's doing more personal, artistic, and job printing. And hey, Tom, you're here. I see your video.
For now.
I think you're just trying to keep us all on our toes to see what happens.
Trying to save you the breaking all your cameras and screens with my mug. Again, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. I may be in and out depending on my internet connection. I am in Indiana, so the 21st century is just reaching us now. But again, thanks, Stephanie, and thanks everybody at Hamilton. This is quite a humbling experience being asked to do this. But I figure if Jason Wedekin can do it, anybody can do it.
So that's the kind of wit you're going to get in the chat if Tom, during his presentation. Tom, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad we can share your work. I will stop any fist fights. Jim Moran will be our bouncer in the chat as well. So keep it civil, but witty. Okay. Yeah. I am going to start your presentation if that's good, Tom. Is there anything else you wanted to start with?
No, just sorry for saying so much, and I had no idea I sounded like such a hillbilly, so that's it. And if you've seen this work, bear with me. It'll be over fairly quickly. And I need to shout out to Aaron Beckloff because I didn't notate all the students' names of the work that I used in the presentation. I just sort of shoved some stuff in there. So tell them not to be too mad at me, and I'll figure out something to send them or some way to be nice to them. But that's it. Again, thanks for having me.
That sounds good. And they're at Miami of Ohio, right? So shout out to them. Okay, well, I am going to start the presentation. Like I said, you can put questions into the chat because Tom will be answering questions via the chat today. And then we do still have time at the end to unmute and ask questions via video. So awesome. Here we go. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks.
Yep.
Greetings, Earthlings, and everyone else. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for your attendance and support. This image presentation and voiceover has been pre-recorded, so questions and heckling, while appreciated, should be reserved for our live interaction toward the end of the hang. Some finger pointing is in order here first of all. Thanks to Stephanie and all the museum staff for hosting these delightful interactions. I've been more connected and closer to this group of folks in 2020 than I think I have been in all the previous years. I've known about this letterpress and printing community because I see you almost every week because of these Zoom meetings instead of once or twice a year. So with that, please sit back, relax, and enjoy the next 3 hours as I take you on a strange and rambling journey about printing, baseball jargon, patterns, geometry, and studio space. In 2007, I had the opportunity to teach at IU Bloomington my alma mater. I had received my BFA in '93 and had grown pretty fond of the type shop and some of the resources there that I got to use while in undergrad. I had gotten a taste of this really nice wood type and metal type collection, and I think 7 Vandercook presses while I was down there as a student. And I hadn't been teaching there long when Professor Paul Brown, a friend and teaching colleague, and also one of my former faculty members when I was a student, and a friend of the Wood Type Museum, told me that there was this museum in Wisconsin that I had to check out. He went on and on about them being the largest manufacturer of wood type in the U.S. 1.5 million pieces of wood type, blah blah blah, home of the ice cream sundae. And since wood type and printing bug had already bitten me, I figured I was certainly game for that. Plus, I figured there was some good beer and cheese with my name on it in Wisconsin somewhere. So I accompanied Paul up to the museum and instantly fell in love with the place and the people. The rest is pretty much a 13-year history of personal trips, student trips, conferences, residencies, many different types of activities. I've gotten to uncrate type and images. I've gotten to vacuum and clean them, oil them, notate them, photograph, build shelves, and certainly proof and do restrike printing. This is a Asylum of Horrors poster that Paul and I printed, probably one of the first ones from the Globe collection that I printed, and it's a massive 2-block print. This is a rhino that we printed last year. That's from the Inquirer collection. Paul and I have teamed up on that. It's like a 3 or 4 color print. So again, lots of these are some other restrikes that I've done at different times up there when I wasn't cleaning or shelf building or oiling. This is another one that Paul and I worked on. We tried to mimic the 3 Johnnies or the triple Johnny that Hatch is so fond of or so well known for. So we did 3 giraffes. Done some auto racing bootleg posters. I happen to live in Indianapolis and have been sitting in the same seats for the largest spectacle or the greatest spectacle in racing for since '79, Southwest Vista, just out of turn 1. So a couple bootlegs there. These are some unsanctioned promotional posters for Hamilton that I've done while up there. A little ink joke there on the fill your density, and then the Wood Time Call Hamilton poster that was actually printed down at IU while I was teaching. And this year I got to design some campaign branding and some online elements for the Waze Goose. You probably saw that. There were animations and a bandana and lots of different needs. They were even silly enough to let me write some headlines and copy for that conference as well. So be careful what you ask for. So back to IU. Again, this gem of a collection, about 100 wood fonts, mostly majuscules. These are typefaces coming from about 1870, 1880 on. Lots of Gothics, but that's a beautiful Etruscan on top, an extended Latin on the bottom, and some other nice typefaces, a runic. Let's see what's up on top there. That's a Mansard, or I've heard that called Detroit as well. I think Hamilton had a number. Lots of French Clarendons, lots of Gothics, and these are some really nice small typefaces too, like 4-line, 5-line. So again, just a wonderful collection. I'd seen this stuff in undergrad, not paid too much attention to it. I'd done quite a bit to printing then, a little bit in grad school, but not much in between, mostly commercial design work, working for agencies. But again, a great opportunity to sort of reconnect with this collection while teaching. So started out as a visiting assistant after 1 year, and then 2, and then 3, and became a full-time lecturer, and a total of 7 years teaching down there, and access to some of these great resources. Tried to figure out project work that I could do while teaching and grading and was commuting, so I was living with my in-laws during the week, and really instead of going home at 3 or 4 at night, I would just stay and really till about midnight or 1, and was printing and doing club activities with the students, and just sort of spending more time on campus than anywhere, really, at home or anywhere. So again, trying to figure out a project, some personal project work. Was doing some different stuff, but had always had interest in baseball. I did a project while I was in grad school that documented a semi-pro baseball league in Southern Indiana that some family members had played in from 55 to 75. This was an informational timeline, but didn't really. I did some of the work with jargon and slang on this, but didn't do a lot of research into it. Just listened to some stories and had a few, I think 4 different panels on this that used baseball slang and some of that terminology, but also had found in some of the research and artifacts that I'd collected, old score books and equipment, some of that stuff I shot and used in that project, that scoreboard. But did find this pretty wonderful hand stitched pennant. I think this is probably late 50s, maybe mid 50s when that league started. But I'm guessing either my aunt or my grandmother, somebody had sewed this for the team. They were the Gentryville Pirates, and had also always loved the sort of happenstance and strange language that we would find in these one-line specimens. Splendid flora and basket fiends and toddler eagles, probably pretty cute, but had loved the sort of again juxtaposition of these different words and sort of funky language that you find in these one-line specimens. So that started to sort of gel with me, and started to research baseball language or baseball slang, trying to trace it to its original fount, according to this article from 1916. And lo and behold, I see another one of the Moran brothers. There are so many of them. Here's another, this is a late 19th century baseball slang article. So started to look at what I could find basically online, sent off for some interlibrary loans while I was teaching. Got a hold of a nice 1939 baseball slang dictionary. Went to some very academic research. This is one of Dizzy Dean's installations for his Dizzy Dean definitions, but he had a sort of a dictionary periodical, but just got further and further into the research, and started finding. Actually, I found the Dixon Baseball Dictionary, which pretty much was the hot corner for baseball slang. I pieced together lots of articles and some other resources, but when it came down to it, this one really had the etymology, had first uses, had this guy really had done all the work. So this became a sort of a great resource, and where I would go to most. Started sketching and word listing from there on. This was ongoing. Just had hundreds and hundreds of different words, and some of these were themed pennants. Some of them were just words that I liked, or words that fit when I could find the letter forms. These weren't all complete alphabets in the type shop there. So also had decided on a size 13 by 30, cut myself a pennant template, and which actually made it through the whole printing. I still have it and use it to sort of frame stuff still today when I'm sort of working on trying to figure out what I'm going to cut or what I'm going to roll up. But here's that locked up on press. I was doing all the press work on a Universal 3 with an adjustable bed. This was in the type shop at IU where all the students worked. And so we had a motto: set it, print it, and distribute it. And I think I'm the one that printed that sign and printed that N upside down. So that, like I said, I was still learning to print here, still learning to print today. But this was all, again, in a common space. Undergraduate typography students would use this space for a couple weeks every every time that class was run, we were running 2 or 3 of those sections. Graduate students were using this. Upper level students would come in and do some project work, self-directed project work, and occasionally we would run a special course and just letterpress, and they would be in all semester. So it was a busy hop and shop, and we really couldn't leave stuff in the galleys that long. So I tried to do the same as we wanted the students to do. Tried to get it in, print it, get it out, and get it back in its cases. Sometimes I took liberties over weekends or when I got into really complex settings. But again, all this was done on a Uni 3. There's Jim giving me some pointers. And here we go. We'll just start looking at pennants and some details. Speed Merchant's just a fast runner. Some details. And again, this Mohawk Superfine 130-pound double thick cover would really pick up all the details and wood grain and some of the worn patina on these typefaces that have been used for over 60 years by students, faculty, and workshop attendees. There's some chatter over swinged. And here's one of my sketches and sort of the resulting. Some of these were just straight stacks of type, which were pretty easily set. Some were sort of running the length of the pennant. And at other times, I cut a couple pieces of plywood so that I could match the angle of the pennant. And then, of course, some wedges that fit the angle, that made up for the angle at the ends of these different line sizes or type sizes so that I could sort of get good pressure on the line. There's some stonework up above there where I'm sort of figuring out make ready after proofing. So lots of make ready. Again, some of these typefaces were 100 years old and were not all type high. Some of them were proud, like that first image I showed of the rounded outline Gothic. That stuff set up. It was very high, way above type high. This pennant sort of describes my experience playing baseball. These are all sort of missteps. I was definitely caught napping, and I think I had concrete hands and an iron glove. These are different names for baseball fields. Again, a themed pennant. I printed furniture to sort of make that pattern of the mowed fields. There's a detail of that. Different names for baseballs. There were many, more than I could print on this pennant, and some of the borders that we had in the shop. That printing bed, I could basically fit 25 inches of type until the deadline, and that left me 5 inches of unprinted area on my 30-inch pennant, which I then united the whole series of prints with these star borders printed in that bright red. There's a detail of that. Again, well-worn type. Lots of the stuff's pretty rounded. Some of it's still in really good shape. Other typefaces are beat all up. I would set this entire bed and then basically space things with furniture and leave only the one color to print. So that was an interesting print. I think I left like a 6-point border between all those different colors. So that was a nice challenge. Just trying to, like I said, learn how to print and do some different techniques along the way. Here's some more furniture printed. So brought up to type high. Again, that adjustable bed on that press allowed me to do some nice stuff. And I could also put chipboard and binders board sort of underneath this stuff. It's just a lot of cutting. Here's the furniture type high. Brought up to same height. Here, these are all names for pitches, using the different O's in the collection to sort of show the different trajectories of a pitch, curveballs and knuckleballs and fastballs and sliders and all the slang that sort of goes along with that. All the rainouts. This is just a mineral spirits technique that I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Split fountain for that bottom layer in blue to green, and then a light black layer with the mineral spirits. And I think I came over that with rules, and then we had some I think it's got a number. I can't remember the name of the typeface, but basically those neat ends where it's got that little sort of streamer into the cap letters. Those are printed in a very light sort of iridescent. Like I dusted those with an iridescent powder. You can barely see those caps. This is more about a ticket, basically a ticket design with some of the smaller typefaces. This is a specimen of small type, some of the smaller types in the shop. Just numbers. All the exclamation points I could find in the collection, except for probably like 4 or 5 I couldn't fit on there. Some split fountain techniques. Again, just all numbers. We had like 4 cases of just Clarendon numerals. Tons and tons of numerals. So I just did a couple of split fountains, a 2 color, and then the star borders. Elysium is where all the famous players go, and heroes and Greek myths. Rusty Gate is just somebody with a really bad swing. There's a pegboard. I did a background split fountain. That was just something I brought from home. So, like I said, just started trying out different techniques. I think I printed beadboard. The one in the middle here, the hen fruit and skunk, that's all about scoreboard nomenclature, printed with some of the numeral sets from the collection on top of that, the transparent silver. Again, just sort of random words, all about sort of there in the lower right, the Sizzler Fireball. It's all sort of about throwing the heat, fastballs. Let's see, what upper left is all about umpires. Here's the detail of that. We're using complementary colors and sort of offsetting those slightly, gives you that sort of blurry effect. A little conversation in the middle, fair, foul, out, safe, strike, ball. The Gonfalonia and Titanomachy, that's all about the pennant chase, the divisional championships at the end of the season. There's a detail of that with the sort of the pointers waving as flags. And that Van Lannen Latin there with Matthew Carter design, trying to get that to register. Of course, I kind of like it unregistered a little bit. In the middle there, all names for bats. That was probably a 7 color or so print. But again, just trying out different techniques, moving, getting sort of a halo to bring that type, make it jump off the page a little bit, printing the backs of some of the wood type. Using that template on press, and then basically doing a ruling proof. Once I started proofing, I could finesse and move things a little bit, space them a little bit differently to make sure that things were cropping the way I wanted them to, and that things were still sort of legible. There was enough left on the page, but yeah, dealing with an acute isosceles triangle is an interesting problem. You know, we're used to dealing with rectangulars and square pages, but this was a whole nother ball game. Sort of printing with the angle, and then cropping. There's that Bing irregular snow cone print that you saw the makeup before earlier. And here's sort of a lewd. These are all sort of the lascivious terms or euphemisms I could think of from the baseball slang. They don't mean, they have no meaning for that, but they're in my dirty mind. Decided to name it Ramacac, a name for a well-hit ball or a line drive, basically used in that way sometimes. But it sounded like some of the etymology that went back, and it was actually derived from sort of the sound of the ball hitting the wood bat. So I thought that sort of made sense with the wood type hitting paper. So that became the name of the book and the name of, or this edition of Prince, and then the name of my press a little bit later on. Started to think about how I could put these together. I wanted to put them together in I didn't want to bind them, so I thought I would do a box, and I wanted to actually trim the pennants out into their triangular shape. So figuring out a triangular box was a little bit tedious, and probably one of the hardest things about this project. I had to do lots of templates, and finally, after several rounds, I think I did about 6 or 7 prototypes to sort of figure out the boxes, and then I've done a couple of batches of about 5 at a time. Most of the time I end up with about 4 out of 5 that work, but the tolerances are tight in these, especially in that far corner that's got that tight triangle corner with all the different layers of binders, board and cloth, and it's a little bit tricky to get all that stuff in there when you got wet glue, and it's a big box. It's, you know, 31 by 13 or so. So it's it's tough. So I've got stacks of these laying around in sort of different states. I think I'm pretty much down to the red and the black. Those are the colors I like. It's an Italian canapetta is the cloth, and some of the black ones I pinstripe. I tried some Masahi silk cloths and some metallic book binding cloth, but really sort of like that canapetta, the texture of it, and then just the colors are sort of classic. So here's a black one. I've got some linen lifts that allow you to get that book block out, or you basically just take it and sort of turn each one over as you page through it and put it in the lid. And there's the cover. I just sort of pulled out some of the star borders and did that as a little inset detail. Here's a red box. And with triangles, you end up with lots of cutoffs. Half of the area of each of those pages is just these sort of, areas of. There's some printing on them that came outside the crop. I didn't really know what to do with these. I could just recycle them, but I thought we could recycle them into little sort of these funky polygonal bound journals. I think that's what I'm going to do with all of them. Let's see the other prints. I'm going to box 20. Some of the runs I only did like 25 or 30 maybe of each print. Later on, I went to longer runs of like 60. So I have lots of prints. I also have lots of make readies. So that's what I think this is sort of indicating what I'm going to do with those and try and sell those individual prints, or I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with them yet, but we're going to have lots of prints. And I think I'm going to roll color to sort of define the pennant shape that makes the most sense. It sort of covers up some of the printing outside the crop and keeps them rectangular. Otherwise, they're just too fragile to sort of sell as prints and ship and stuff. So this is, I think, what we're going to do with them. And again, the make ready was sort of a nice surprise. And this printing, in fact, I started sending this stuff through more and more on purpose and printing more make readies. I think I printed. There were 2,400 sheets and the several cases of paper that I ended up ordering, and so we've got the edition in there, and then again about 500 make readies is what I ended up with. Here's some other ones. Really just sort of beautiful textural. Some of the letter forms some of them become abstract. Here's some details of those abstractions of letter forms. Really love some of these little shots. And trying to figure out what to do, but all this was sort of rattling around in my brain. Rounded Gothic, just a detail from that. But again, abstractions of letter forms, type as image, type as texture, type as pattern. Some of that stuff was going through my head. Hamilton let me put a show up in their facility a few years ago, and got to thinking about bunting and displaying these pennants, and so started experimenting with ideas about using type as, again, texture and pattern, and started doing some of these modular prints where these are 3 Teutonic U's that I had from a nice all caps typeface of Teutonic. It's about a 20 or 30 line, maybe 25. Printed these sort of serpentine prints, and then they just became modules in these serpentine undulating columns. Did the same thing within. Some of this was sparked by wrought iron and some other patterning and things I'd seen in architecture and gates and just other ornamentation out there. So started thinking a little bit more about that. Here's a pennant about ready to be printed. This is on one of my presses, my Model 4. It's got I can print like a 19-inch sheet on it. So started doing basically 30-degree pennant shapes on creating sort of half rounds or bunting shapes or even full medallions. So here's a sort of a funky configuration of those. Here's a little different experiment. Figured out if I had elements that were somewhat symmetrical, that I could turn these and they could instead of just printing these sort of radial or these medallions, I could actually do longer borders or different shapes or start to create undulating borders. These are just star borders and some stars from more wood type. There's another one of this Spanish Art Nouveau typeface, I think. Again, printing that in a different couple of different colors, silver and sort of a metallic purple that you could sort of see. But whatever this configuration is, thought it was pretty interesting. Just more modular aspects of using some of that symmetry. These are medallions made from that configuration. So again, serpentine that sort of started talking together on that other edge. And again, was very wasteful on just the single pennant. So figured out some other geometry where I could get 2 equilaterals and 2 obtuse isosceles out of this, and different ways of trimming that would yield hexagons, triangles, and then some of these other sort of combination and modular layouts. And this was sort of the first iteration of that. This is all hand rolled. Sort of reminds me of patinaed bronze or metal. This is all H's and star borders. So it did opened up some really interesting configurations as far as modular prints. This is an installation of that. Catherine Fries down at UND basically gave me a whole wall during, they were featuring some Indiana letterpress printers. So got a chance to show some of this stuff and clearly mark the exit door. That was nice, so people could get out. Let's see what else. Here's some of those other experiments. There's the undulating columns of the Teutonic U's. Another sort of rules and ornaments that I had in another configuration. It was a pennant shape, but I just sort of cut it short and did a sort of this strange organic but mechanical. Again, this is all hand rolled, but so the same but different. I kind of like that idea. All this, while all that was going on, I'd been sort of talking with Aaron Beckloff over at Miami University in Ohio, and I had been to that letterpress educators conference that all these guys came up with, and presented some of those early iterations of this experimentation. But she and I were talking, and she wanted me to sort of pushing me to figure out a student project. So we came up with the idea for them to do the corner fills, and that was sort of stage 1. And then later on, because of the paper waste and because I thought the work and turn was actually pretty easy, and it would yield more modularity within the installation, we could do the double equilateral layout here. So I gave some introduction to sort of that project, and that was looking at architectural detail, some bronze doors, again talking about materiality, some of the things that I'd been looking at in some of my experimentation: rose windows, wrought iron work, type as image, type as ornament, Buckminster Fuller's Dymaxion map, and geodesic domes. There's just cultural patterning. That's a Burmese basket that a friend of ours made for us. I showed them, tried to bring it into sort of a design context, because these are all graphic design students. So Peter Barron's Identity for AEG, and some Dwiggins ornaments in the middle, Lance Wyman Identity for the '68 Olympics. There's transom Art Deco stuff. There's Grammar of Ornament. Owen Jones's book sort of talked about this stuff long ago. They started doing these the pennant ones where they could just sort of set stacks. They were using anything they wanted to in the shop. We really sort of opened it up. A lot of the stuff I was showing them was letter forms in my own work, but I was also using borders, and they were welcome to sort of use what else was in the shop. And some of the results were pretty damn spectacular. They were, it was, I thought, fairly successful for people who had never touched letterpress before, let alone, put together modular installation prints. So we'll run through some of those. I like the sort of cutting it off kilter so that one line matches up with another. I thought that was nice for that radial sort of spiraling, which I think I'm absolutely going to steal. We looked at different papers. We looked at metallics and how those sort of leap off the page. most of the time they were doing these in one run on the press, so they couldn't really overlap or get too complex. I think some did, but most of these were sort of one take, one run through the press. They did like an edition of 20. And again, we really just asked for a corner fill, but everybody started doing medallions and other configurations, which we were certainly open to. They got into it. These are some pretty complex ones. I love the T set at an angle here to make an even. So they were all printing. Everybody was doing dodecagons or again other weird configurations. Here's a sort of a serpentine configuration. There's a transom that was a 2-color print. This is one where we did. This is I think the only version of the double equilateral where this was their installation of that. This was about a 5-foot tall. They got a hexagon and several of the triangles that came together, but I thought a very successful project for two undergrad students who had never been on a press before. Here's some other project work that I was doing that sort of incorporated patterning. This is a Hammett 20, Jen Farrell at Star Shaped Press, the artist in residence at Hamilton, invited me to be part of that project. You'll have to go look at the finished print online in Hamilton store, but here's basically 6 of those together, and again thinking about how they could become this larger modular print and also work alone. It's just a press view. I had one set of that. I had 1, 2, and 1, 0. So this went through about 13 times. Here's another print of just braces, and these are all hand rolled. And here's a press view. And I would, from the previous print, I would just sort of cut out my template, and I could move them for the next print and have them sort of touch closely, or start to create gaps in this print. Here's a detail. It's not the tightest shot ever, but it gives you a sense of sort of what was going on. It reminded me of engraving and some of the on currency and some of the what do they call that? Some of the security devices they use. Let's see what else. Here's a more recent one. These are just exclamation points printed from one side of the page, flipped, printed again, so I could get that sort of over-under thing going with the blend of silver and orange. Not sure what I'm going to do with that print. Here's just a signpost. It's just recent stuff. So the studio that I'm working in is basically my house, and it's a one-man band here. Although my wife helps and comments and tells me to quit printing triangles. I've got a Vandercook SP15 and a Model 4, and it really is just an all-season porch with a tile floor on concrete. It's kind of nice. I put a couple of gel mats down to make it easy on my feet and legs and back, but nothing fancy here. The 4, they're both in good shape. This one, the rollers melted on it, so we had to take this one apart and clean it, although I didn't take the bed off, so we still get blue goo on us every once in a while. Someday I'll have to remedy that. There's just the other sides, like you can see, I can get in there, I can get the cases pulled out, I can work, I can turn and ink up on that glass over there and get right to the bed. So it's a nice tight work area. Everything's sort of got its place, but again, for 1 or 2 people, it works. I do my stonework on an old piece of marble. There's just a cutting mat, tools. I've got about 30, maybe 35 wood fonts and about probably a good cabinet and a half of cases of metal type, a good run of Optima and some Centaur and Origi and a few Gothics, and that's about it. So a few decorative typefaces too in metal, just caps. Let's see what else. There's where I do all my inking. I've got a little nipping press. And my drying rack, I forgot to show that, is just a couple of old banisters with dowels and strings with clips. That's about all I do. I can get about 150 prints sort of hanging above the cases over there. So I've got one other wall in there, and that's the big type up on top. My leading cutter, my leading cabinet, some reglet, and a galley, about 100 galley trays in that cabinet of just other type and ornaments and cuts and tools and all that stuff. leads into the garage. There I've got a CNP old style 8x10, which is currently being used as a boot drying rack by my wife. We've got a nice Peerless gem over there that's got a 30-inch throat on it. That thing's great for tackling parent sheets. There's a standing floor press, board shear, foil stamping machine back there, pallet jack, front of my car, and a let's see what else. That's it. Anyway, the board shear and the standing floor press are on casters, and I can wheel those out when we pull the cars out. So I've got access to all the stuff. If I do a production run, it's just we're also remodeling right now, so we're sort of clearing space so we can work on the house a little bit. This is my back office where I've got the computer scanner. I do some of my binding and sewing and stuff up on this old library table that came from IU. I think both my wife and I probably stood at that table when we were undergrads. She bought it at a surplus sale for like $60. It is one of the best tables. I'm just going to recover it in Formica one of these days. Out in our shed, we've got an outbuilding that's about 25 by 25, and that has some overflow equipment that is under maintenance. There's a drill press I'm trying to figure out and work on a little bit. There's a backing rounder for binding. Let's see what else. An electric guillotine. I do some of my finish cutting. That's pretty nice. That's got a 19-inch throat on it. And my vice grips there. So of course, the first thing I did was take all the safety things off of it, so I could see what I was doing in there. And it's a multi-use space. We do ceramics out there. We do wood cutting, woodworking projects. I store my mower, so there's a lot of overflow out there. I think there is a what do you call them? Like a sliding crosscut saw top with typographic increments. So there's lots of equipment out there that sort of needs some TLC, but I like printing in the house. I like keeping everything inside. I could condition this outbuilding, but we choose not to. So it's a little bit more comfortable working inside. Plus my wife and I can sort of be together and tease each other about printing triangles. But that's my niece there throwing some pottery. I haven't gotten the wheel out for a while, but we use our house, and we like printing and binding and doing all this stuff at home. And I think that's it. So thank you very much, and hopefully this all worked, and we'll open it up to the live discussion. Thanks.
That was great, Tom.
Oh my God, that was painful to listen to yourself.
Not to us.
Gluttons for punishment then. Well, cool. What questions do you have?
I have a question.
Shoot.
Your background, I think, is really interesting from the standpoint that you've got a strong academic background, but that practical print shop experience goes from letterpress through offset into screen printing, and then there is the design aspect of it that you've worked on. It seems like you get to draw from many places, and I'm just wondering if you feel like you get to pull little pieces from all of those places you've been.
Oh yeah, I think all of us are sort of the sum of all of our experiences. So it's a nice quiver of arrows to reach from. I've got, like you said, I started in early pre-press and film mechanicals and all those days. I think several of us here in this hang have done, but and moving through digital and designing everything from websites to print collateral to branding systems so it's I love the fact that I did experience all of those sort of analog processes, because it does inform current work, just as running things through the digital washer does as well. So I really love that I've had all those disparate experiences and lots of different jobs, and it's been wonderful, and like I said, a good pool to or a good kit of parts to draw from. I think a lot of us have those backgrounds. Thanks. Wow, everybody's so quiet now. My fingers are sore from typing so much. Thanks for all your comments and heckling.
Frank, you unmuted. Do you have a question? I have a couple that I don't think you answered, Tom. So we'll
Okay.
let Frank ask his, and I'm happy to ask those, and anybody else can also unmute and ask.
Good deal.
I don't really have a question. I was just
getting excited. It was
Getting
good
ready.
work.
getting ready to heckle if I need to.
Okay. I'll do that too.
Great presentation.
Well, thanks, Frank. You held a pretty high bar, so hopefully that wasn't too horrible. Some of those images were a little blurrier than I would have hoped in some of the detail shots, but that may just be my computer and my internet.
I was going to say that might be your internet. It looked fine.
Yeah, it looked good. They're
Tom, what was-
really. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask, what was the Ramacac slang from?
The term Ramacac, or is that what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
Okay. It was just it was one of the terms that I found in Dixon's dictionary, although I think I've heard that one actually used by some sportscasters, primarily on the West Coast, but I think I've heard it used more as like a well hit ball, or like a line drive, like just a hard hit ball, a frozen rope, or a liner. But the etymology that I found, or sort of the definition that I liked, was that it possibly came from the sound of the ball, the crack of the bat hitting the ball hitting the wood bat, and like I said, sort of wood type hitting the paper. It sort of made a little bit of sense there, plus I did a Google search and nobody was using it.
Well, I Googled it and nothing. I Googled Ramacac definition and I'm like, dude, he made that up. Like, it was no hit. It was you. You Google it and it's you. And
no, I never make things up.
me neither, dude. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Thanks,
Tom,
Jason.
I have a tech question for you. I was amazed at your work when I went to the show at UIndy.
Thanks, Scott.
How do you, are they all individual? Are they all taped together? Are they on a binder? All those different shapes going up?
It's a very technical process called tape. We just tape them together.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just artist paper tape, and that's sort of the trouble of creating modular prints that you then tape together into larger modules, so that I can get them in my car, so that I can transport them and then install them in an exhibit. So that's sort of the stinker of some of that, is it's just really tough to maneuver those. And again, I sort of lose that modularity, and these aren't massive runs. I'm probably running about 60. I think the sort of funky double equilaterals that was all over above that exit, that was probably a run of about 70 prints, and I sliced up most of those to get that installation. And I have those again. I just sort of tape those up into larger modules, or I'm calling them modules, but they would start to meander, and then when I got on site, I kept a few back so I could sort of connect these things. And but I figure I can probably slice those all apart and redo some of that stuff for some future installations. I don't know how long I can get away with that. Probably as until the tape builds up so much that they start getting too heavy for me to move. I think I answered your question, didn't I?
Steph, I did think of two questions.
Go for it.
Are you cutting the pennants by hand is the first question.
Yep.
And then you used the fancy word for multiple angle. I think it was, what was that word you used? Polygonal?
Polygonal?
Like that?
I told you I had to look that up. Polygons, just the crazy, I'm calling them polyptics instead of combination prints, but
There you go, making up more words.
yeah.
Ramacac.
You don't know it, fake it.
Yeah. So
Just
did you
say it
cut,
with confidence.
did you cut them by hand?
Yeah, everything was cut by hand, and in fact, that entire the sort of that blue-green patinaed one, that was all rolled by hand as well. And again, part of what I've been experimenting with has been same but different. I know I call these modules, but I like the idea that they're all slightly different, and you look at it, it sort of becomes one, but then when you get up on it, you can see that they were all actually individual prints. So, but yeah, they're all hand rolled and they're all hand cut, just because of I just wanted to sort of nail that symmetry on those. You could probably actually construct some jigs or something for your guillotine, or if you got into a sizable run and wanted to do it like that. But it really didn't take that long. It was just sort of an evening of sitting at a cutting mat slicing.
That piece that you had where you had this sprinkled spattered solvent on it,
Oh yeah, yep.
spattered onto the wood type, or is it spattered onto the print after you printed it?
It was on the wood type, and I think I used a toothbrush for that, sort of a lot of watercolorists use that technique too, and in other media, but it was directly on the wood type. But I would say that's a pretty messy situation there, and it wasn't something that I did that one late at night, so the students couldn't see me doing that. And but it, that, of course, that mineral spirits, that sort of runs down between the type a little bit. But if you keep it light, it's not bad, and it's pretty interesting because as it dries, there's this reticulation that starts to happen. There's another made-up word for you, Frank. But you can start to see the drying process happen, and it sort of leaves interesting rings. And but I mean, I was trying everything just again to sort of learn how to print and try to sort of roam through some of those processes and experiments. But yep, it was applied directly to the type.
So the question I really wanted to make sure to ask was asked earlier by Jessica Spring and now has been asked by Aaron Becklaw.
Oh, I missed it.
It's okay. It's good. That's why we're asking. Tom, how can people institutions buy the Ramacac portfolio, the sketchbooks, make ready prints? How can we buy your stuff is the question.
That's my favorite question.
Right?
Well, I've got some of the books, the sets are ready. I've probably got a half a dozen that I'm ready to part with, but I don't really have. I've got a website, but I don't have the e-commerce and stuff set up on it. So the books are going to be probably a little expensive, but let me know. Contact me. I don't have a ton of the sketchbooks done just because that's just sort of an afterthought. But I plan to get some of this stuff up on my website and sell it. But if you want some stuff, I think I've sold a few at some of the Hamilton conferences. I think I've given away some of the make readies, or traded them more likely. But I will work on e-commerce and try to get some of that stuff up for sale. And I'm not sure about the books, how to sort of get those out to institutions. I don't think anybody is really hunting for my work since it's so rare that I sell artist books. I think I sold one other one years ago. It was a screen printed about fishing and the history of type. So those made it to some institutions, but I'm not quite sure how I'm going to sell these. I was just planning on sort of making direct contact with some folks, or maybe I thought about Vamp and Tramp. I got to ship them out to the West Coast, but I'm still thinking about that. If you have any good ideas for me, let me know. Or if somebody wants to buy one or for their institution, let me know, and I'm happy to talk about that.
I think that's great. Well, now people have seen so much more. You're gonna have people knocking down your door. I did put your website over in the chat,
okay,
so people
awesome.
can contact you.
Thanks.
And get more. Go ahead.
Oh, I said I can't believe my internet is still with me, that I haven't froze on you. So this is awesome.
So you could have done it live.
I could have done it live, but then you wouldn't have got to hear my penny recorded voice.
Oh, that was perfect.
All right, awesome. Thanks for hanging in there, everybody. What else do you want to know? Well, I should thank Rich Kegler for my and Amelia for my in-person Tom. Here, they shipped that to me. What a nice gesture. But I got this giant package, and it split during shipping, I think, or maybe it was previously split. But I got a really nice woodcut back there with my name spelled backwards. So
it's not.
Oh, cool.
I will I will say we're coming up on the hour, and I like to normally end them right at the hour in case anyone has to go to any other meetings. And I'm happy to stick around. And Tom, I know you got nothing else going on, so Tom will stick around.
This is what unemployment looks like. That's right.
Oh yeah, maybe that's the plug. If you need a great graphic designer, I know Hamilton can say that he Ways Goose designs were out of the park and timely. So if you need a graphic designer, hire Tom Walker. So there's your
Yes.
plug, Tom.
You guys were suckers though.
It worked pretty well. I was happy. I will say thank you to everyone who joined us today. Tom, that was great. That was absolutely inspiring. I've known you, and that knocked me off my socks. I loved it.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you everyone who joined us today. I will say we have one more ham hang. So this was the last one with a presenter, but tomorrow, Saturday, December 19th at 7 p.m. Central, we are going to have a holiday ham hang. Ugly sweaters are expected and encouraged, or whatever you have in your house. Eggnog, Christmas cookies, whatever it is, however you celebrate. We're going to be goofing off tomorrow at 7 p.m. Central. So I will say going to put the links in there so you can join us. I also have 3 ham hangs starting for 2021. Mark Simonson is going to start us off on January 8th. And then we're going to do another Inquirer special extravaganza where we're going to open up some boxes that haven't seen the light of day for 50 years. And then Miss Amelia Fontanelle from RIT is going to show us around the Carey collection a bit, and they just got a new collection. So we are starting the year off strong because right now we're still in our homes. So we're hoping for better things in 2021. Also, I want to say you guys have been so supportive over the year. We have had, as long as somebody shows up for the holiday ham hang tomorrow, we will have had 3,000 people join us for these Hamilton hangs.
Whoa.
Right? Yeah, it's been amazing.
Wow.
So, and that's over 52 events, and at least 45 people have become members through ham hangs. So
Awesome.
I want to say thank you. You guys make this happen. I've had so many people say that this helped keep them connected with the Letterpress community, and me too. So that is my thank you to everyone for all of your support and being here, because it means so much to me, to Hamilton, and to everyone else. So I think that's my official stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to hang out. You guys can hang out if you want. It's so nice to see you all. If you have to go, we totally understand. So thank you for joining us.
We should all thank you for hosting these, and for everybody else at the museum for putting this stuff on. It's really been like I said in my presentation, a great connection, and I've gotten to know people more on these than I think all those past years, and where I'd see them once or twice. So I think it's really been a wonderful thing to do, especially in the current situation. And even if we don't have a worldwide pandemic, why not continue this?